Welcome to Working for Women, the Independent Women's Forum podcast, where we are changing the conversation about women and public policy for the better.
Hey everyone, I'm Julie Gunlock with the Independent Women's Forum and your host for today's Working for Women podcast. Today I'm here with Alicia Maldonado. She is a member of the New York Post editorial board where she writes on a variety of issues from government corruption to free speech on campus. She even touches on foreign relations. We are also very proud to have Alicia as a senior fellow at the Independent Women's Forum. So today, Alicia and I are going to be talking a bit about a recent blog post that she did for IWF about the ongoing problems unfolding in Burma and how she feels about recent calls to strip Burma's leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, of her Congressional Medal of Honor, which is the nation's highest civilian honor. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So first, I'm hoping. I think a lot of people. There's an awful lot going on here stateside, so they might not be paying attention to some foreign policy issues. And I think Burma is one of those that sort of gets, a little bit lost in the shuffle. Can you tell us a bit about what is actually happening in Burma and what are the human rights advocates so worried about?
Definitely. I think you're totally right in that it's such a small country and so far away that it doesn't quite seem, even if you hear about it in the news, it doesn't quite seem to register, I don't think. But what's going on there now is what the United States is calling ethnic cleansing, basically. The Rohingya are a majority Muslim ethnic minority in Burma, Myanmar. They've long been considered illegal immigrants from Bengal instead of Myanmar, haven't been denied citizenship since 1982. They're just not wanted by most of the Burmese who are Buddhist, mostly Buddhist.
Right. Okay.
But anyway, I mean, these Rohingya, this minority, they've been living in the country for centuries. And now they're just being targeted with violence, beheadings of children, being forced into sex trafficking. Their homes are being set on fire. They're being shot at, and they're trying to flee. And they are running to Bangladesh. And there's about 700,000 refugees there now. But those are the ones who can make it because they're setting up these booby traps and trying to kill these innocent people as they're trying to flee the country, and it's just really grotesque. Human rights groups, of course. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt you. What are human rights? Are human rights groups on the ground there, and what are they seeing and reporting?
They're kind of giving us all of those numbers. Doctors Without Borders that reported that there's maybe over 10,000, or close to 10,000, or over rather, probably is a better way to say it, deaths because of this. Amnesty, the Burmese government, I'm just going to go back and forth and call it Burma and Myanmar. I hope that's all right.
That is confusing, and we can actually, I wouldn't mind just a little tangent there explaining that because I'll let you finish this thought, and then I'll have you explain that.
Human rights groups are trying. They're trying to give them aid. The Burmese government, Myanmar government, are considering legislation to make it harder for aid groups to get there, and they're worried because it's a monsoon season, and all of these people who are on the border, they're afraid of that on top of everything else.
Now, one thing that might help a little bit, and you don't have to go too far into this, but give people a sense of, you mentioned Burma and Myanmar. That is the same country. They go by two separate names. When it was under military control, it was called Myanmar, and when it was sort of before the military took control in a coup, it was called Burma, and it's returned to the name Burma under its new leadership, sort of democratic reforms. And again, people know it by both names. Maybe you could give, that's a quick explanation of it, but, I want to get back to Aung San Suu Kyi. Why is she so revered? She is right now the leader of Burma, but she at one point, give people kind of a sense of why, one, she is revered or was revered as a human rights advocate, what she sacrificed for her own country, because I think as we go a little further and talk about this call to take back the awards that she's been given, I think it will help people understand the sacrifices and what she went through to bring freedom to her people and why it's so disappointing now. So give us a sense of who she is and why she's so important in this.
Well, she was very simply, she was a political dissident, and she spoke out against the corruption of the country. She called for, for freedom for the homeless and the displaced, and it was just your very simple running against corruption and speaking out. And for that, she was vilified and sentenced to 20. She was under house arrest for over 20 years.
Yeah, Aung San Suu Kyi was under house arrest. She could not see her husband died. She was not allowed to leave. They told her she could leave the country, but she would never be allowed back in. Her husband, I think he went back to the UK. Took their children with. She never saw her children for something like, I think it's 20 years or something. She sacrificed a tremendous amount. And again, she was a political dissident, but she lived in the country and she was criticizing the military government of Myanmar. It was a communist ruled country under military control. I'm getting this right? I think I'm getting this right.
Yeah. You are.
And it was a communist country, absolutely zero freedom, no press freedom, no religious freedom. This was a completely tightly controlled country, and she was fighting for not only human rights but more freedom, democratic reforms in her country. And for that, she endured incredible abuse. And isolation. For a long time, you didn't hear about her or from her because the government of Myanmar wouldn't let any information in or out. She also had no information on her family. So it was a tremendous. I mean, there have been movies made about her, right? You sort of half expect Angelina Jolie to portray her in the next film, right? And then it happens, right? The government falls, the military government falls. She is elected in a democratic election, but her leadership. Let's talk a little bit about her leadership, and this is why I actually really. I agree with you on your blog post, but I have some sympathy for her. She doesn't have that much control. I mean, the military still has quite a lot of control over the economy, and it still has a lot of, the military is enmeshed in all parts of the Burmese economy and just everyday life. So tell me a little bit about, she doesn't have as much control as we may think she does.
That's true. I mean, but at the same time, she ran on this platform of democracy, freedom. She's still the face for it. She's still the figurehead in a way, and to just stand by and not say anything is a travesty, and especially because we helped her get there.
Right.
And also,
go on.
She's also. I think if I remember, I think it was back in September, the New York Times ran a piece on Rohingya, and she basically said, "This is a national security issue. Don't worry about it." And then has later said, that made references to fake news, saying that, what we're reporting is just not true. And so, I mean, to undermine it that way, on top of it, I mean, whether she has power or not, words carry weight. Right.
Well, that I think was the real basis of your blog post, was to say, look, and again, I want to also inform our listeners that there is some concerns about terrorists being sort of embedded within the Rohingya, and that is what she is saying is a concern for her country, and that it is a national security concern, but it does not in any way excuse the treatment of the Rohingya, the true abuses. And I think what many people sort of, the watchdogs and the people who were for so many years, rooting for Aung San Suu Kyi, and then to see her sit silently, there have been a lot of abuses of the Rohingya. There may be some national security issues that she needs to deal with, but the way in which the military is dealing with that is the true concern, which is what makes me think that she is quite weak. A leader. which still may, if you're going to be a weak leader and not, stand up for the human rights abuses or demand an end to them, that might also be a reason to rescind your award.
I mean, come on. I mean, they're leaving, and you're still trying to kill them. It's mind blowing to me. Well, fine, we'll go. Oh, they'd like to kill you on the way out.
How are these people treated once they reach Bangladesh?
I mean, from what I've read, seen, they're being obviously taken in. Although, how many more can you do? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And there's still concerns there too. There's so many of them.
Right.
It's really sad. So,
this is certainly a disappointment, I think, for those who have for so long sort of been have watched Aung San Suu Kyi fight for her own freedom, fight for the freedom and better human rights conditions for the people of Burma. This is certainly disappointing to see the conditions for the Rohingya. And as you say, they are leaving, they are fleeing, they are trying, and the atrocities, as you mentioned, these are, beheadings of children and burning villages and refugee camps and things. This is obviously, this is
those things go beyond. Those things go beyond. There might be a terrorist in the midst. Like, you don't need to do that to a child.
Right, of course. And these are pretty grotesque sort of witness accounts coming from human rights abuse. Yeah. But I do think, give us just a quick status update on what is the status of, have they officially called for a rescinding of that award, or is that still in process?
That's just, they floating about. A few Democrats floated it out there, and I haven't seen or heard anything more on it.
Right.
And so I'm skeptical anything will be done about it. I probably presume that logic will be there's enough going on here to not worry about a congressional medal. But, I mean, that's just my skepticism coming through.
Right. Well, listen, we will continue to watch this. We are glad that you are watching this for us, and we look forward to your updates on this. And we really appreciate you giving us a sort of an overview of this issue. It's something I'm personally very interested in, so I appreciate your perspective, and I certainly hope you continue to update us. Oh,
I definitely will. I'm going to keep my eye on this one.
Great. Well, listen, Alicia, thanks again for joining us. This has been another episode of the Working for Women podcast. There are more episodes. Check us out at IWF.org.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please give it a thumbs up, share it on social media, or stop by IWF.org for similar content.